Hey everyone, my name is William Bialis, and I welcome you to my presentation today. I'll be talking about a healthy life through diet and fitness, and of course spirituality. Before we get started, I wanted to give you a little bit of a few bullet point backgrounds about why I'm very passionate about this subject and why I hope that I will convey that through the presentation, and by the end of the presentation you may be a little bit more passionate about the subject as well. So of course when I was young age, I wanted to be buff, I wanted to be big and strong, just like most guys my age. And that's kind of where this whole thing started. But at that time, I didn't really understand what being healthy was. I thought I did, but I really didn't. And I didn't realize that strength does not equate to being healthy, right? It's only a part of the equation. And as we go through now in my older age, I'm very happy just to be healthy. Now, if I can get a little buff along the way, great. That's fantastic. I'll take that any day. So this was a journey that I had started again as I was younger, but really in between a certain point in time, I just kind of was like in and out, and I did a lot of poor eating, poor lifestyle choices, things like that. And it really wasn't until about 9 years ago that I really started embracing a more healthy living style. I really started dedicating myself to um, that whole thing. And primarily, that reason was my dad had passed at that time, and he was pretty young. And he had died of several complications related to cancer and liver failure. And really, I started looking at that. And at that time, I had very young kids. And because of his passing, and then seeing that he was not going to be here for for his grandkids, I really said I had to start making some changes in my own life because I definitely wanted to be here further than he was, and to be here for my kids, my grandkids, and maybe even my great grandkids. So I started working towards being healthier. And then on top of that, my mom isn't very healthy as well. She has several comorbidities that she's dealing with at her current age of 75. And so that was another trigger that helped me kind of accelerate or start moving forward into this journey. And also with that, one thing that definitely helps me day to day in this process, sometimes I might forget about these other two, but one thing I try not to forget of is a saying that I had picked up from somewhere about don't let an old person move into your body. And that's something I try to follow every day that I can. Though some days it's harder than others, and it's getting a little harder as I get older. In fact, sometimes I feel like he's already moved in and he's picking out wallpaper patterns. So yeah, it kind of motivates me to get on that treadmill or go downstairs and start with lifting weights. So what is this thing called a healthy life? In my mind, to be healthy, you have to have a true balance between three things: the mind, body, and the spirit. Those are critical. A lot of people refer to it as the mind, body, spirit connection. And it's really what I was talking about earlier. You can't just do strength training. That's not enough. You have to have these three components in place to be healthy, right? You just can't do mindless dieting, mindless exercise. You really have to tap in or draw into your spirit as well to bring that all together, right? And all that together leads you into an understanding of why and how and when you're going to be doing these things, right? It puts all that together in that perspective. And the core piece, one of the core pieces of that is the spirit, right? And I call it the compelling force in this whole equation. Some people call it your will, but it's something definitely you have to have in harmony with these other two pieces so that you can draw from that, and then they can have an interdependent relationship. And that spirit will help get you through those difficult times when you feel like giving up, right? So all three of these have to be in balance. So what are the benefits of a harmony? Many, many benefits. First off, you get sustained health, as I mentioned. You stay healthier. You get sick a lot less. Your immune system through this process is probably at its height. It's boosted. So you're able to fight off disease. You're able to fight off flus, things like that. You get more energy in life. You're able to do more things, which is important as you're getting older. You definitely need that energy. You get longevity. Of course, who doesn't want to live longer, right? So it's been documented and proven that exercise and diet and this healthy lifestyle leads to a longer life. And of course, you get that lower risk of comorbidities, as I mentioned with my mom. where you get more health. So there are a lot of benefits here. This chart is a good example of the exercise component and how it relates to mortality. There was a study published in a periodical on the web called Lancet, where doctors took in a group of individuals and they did a study over time where they looked at exercise in the duration, in this case of minutes, and compared it to a reduction in mortality. And what they drew away from that study is that, in short, the more you exercise, the longer you live, which means the lower their mortality rate is going to be. So you can see in green, a moderate exercise brings you up into the 25th, 30th percentile, and you get into a very vigorous state where you're exercising. You can even hit 45, maybe even 50% a reduction in mortality over time. So I think it's a really good example of what that, how exercise adds to that. And then, of course, with exercise, you need things to support that. Again, that harmony that I was talking about. And that's where we'll start talking about nutrition. So the first thing that I want to talk about nutrition, really one of the first things that I started learning about in this quest 9 years ago about nutrition, because it's critical, is macronutrients, or nutrients in general, but mostly macronutrients. And that's the part where most people are aware of, right? So everybody, I think almost everybody knows about carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, right? Carbohydrates are the energy building blocks, or energy stores that drive your muscles and get you up and going. Proteins are the building blocks that rebuild your muscles, skin, new cells, growth, that kind of thing. And then, of course, fats are used for future storage when you need to draw on them in case you're in a situation where you're not able to eat, right? So those are important parts of your nutrition. That's definitely something you should be paying attention to. And there's ratios that you can look up on the internet that you can kind of adjust, right? So based on things like even the keto diet and those kind of things, they have those ratios of high proteins, less carbs, that kind of thing. And that'll transfer me into the sugars and fats component piece of my discussion, because that relates to the carbohydrate component of the macronutrients. So back in the day when I was growing up, carbohydrates were promoted as a healthy thing to do and to eat lots of them. And fats got a bad rap back then. And really today we understand that really that's flipped around. And that fats really, especially saturated fats, are really good for you. And it's really sugar, which is a base in those carbohydrates, that is really bad for you. And you can see that is evident by this food chart that I've got here, where in the 70s, the base of that food chart were carbohydrates. Sugar, sugar, sugar. Today we see fruits, vegetables, and carbohydrates are relegated up here to a smaller portion of your diet. Right. So sugars are bad in excess, of course. And sugars can lead to something called insulin resistance. And I just want to take a minute to talk about insulin resistance because I think it's important. If you don't know, insulin is an anabolic hormone inside of your body. And anabolic means building, building, building. Insulin's job is to run around your bloodstream and get sugar out of it, right? Because sugar in your bloodstream is toxic to your body. So it needs to get out and to get put into where it's supposed to be. And sugar, or glucose, is supposed to be inside of each muscle cell, skin cell, organ cell, right? And that's what drives that cell's growth and energy usage and that kind of thing. So insulin is designed to get that sugar out. Well, the more sugar you eat, the more you eat sugar, the more often you eat sugar, the more insulin has to be put into your body. That means that insulin is going to those muscle cells more often, and saying, hey, I got deposit for you, deposit. And eventually what happens is those cells say, nope, no more. We cannot take any more of this stuff. So what happens? Well, insulin has to get rid of it. It has to get out of the blood. It has to go somewhere. The only place it can go is into a fat cell. Right? Fat cells are non-discriminating. They will take basically as much sugar as you can give it. And that's what happens in insulin resistance. The cells become, the primary core cells become resistant, fat cells accept. And that what happens is over time those fat cells grow, the more they take in, that leads to obesity, that leads to comorbidities, and that will eventually lead into death. Right? So sugars are huge and important in that respect. And this process of insulin resistance and this process of sugars and insulin in general and the way we eat can lead to something called a thermal set point, and it's another battle that we're all fighting in the form of healthy living and for some weight loss. Over time, your body will develop a set point of comfort, right? Your body wants to be in something called homeostasis, which is I don't want to be too this or I want to be that. I want to be just right. And over time, your body will develop that set point. So if you adopt unhealthy living styles early on, that set point, in the case of eating, will get higher, which means your body will want to retain that weight. And it's hard to get rid of that set point once it's there. So not only are you battling these other food things, you're battling sugar, but now you got to battle your body's own set point where it wants to try to keep you at a certain weight, right? So those are things that are important. So what are some things you can do? Well, one of the big things that I promote and I like a lot is fasting, right? So what is fasting? It's the abstention from eating and maybe even sometimes drinking, though I drink water and tea and black coffee during my fasting periods. A good form of fasting is intermittent fasting, right? Intermittent fasting is where you're restricting your calories, in this case eating, at periods of time, right? It's not a total lack of food, it's just restricting for maybe 16 hours or 20 hours in a particular day, or maybe you're doing 5-day eat, 2 days not eat, that kind of thing, right? And those are some common ways that people actually do this. And there are a lot of benefits that you get from intermittent fasting. Of course, weight loss, fat loss, decreased waist circumference, lowering blood cholesterol levels, lowering hemoglobin H1C levels, which are all fantastic at helping keep those comorbidities at bay, right? We don't want those, which is going to lead us down to this healthy living style. And of course, nutrition is one component, and that nutrition helps support the exercise. And with exercise, I want to talk about the two types that I primarily think are beneficial. There are a couple others, but aerobic is the first one. Aerobic is an endurance type exercise. And what an aerobic means is in the presence of oxygen. And what that really means is that your body's inhaling enough oxygen to provide the energy necessary to get that exercise done without tapping into other reserves, right? And usually those exercises are in the form of 10 minutes or more, right? That's where we get into jogging, the treadmill, skipping rope, that kind of thing. With the endurance exercise, you get benefits of increased heart rates, you get better health and lung function, and your circulatory system is way better as a result. And you lose weight, right? Some examples of that, again, we just talked about, brisk walking, yard work is great. Swimming, I do a lot of yard work, by the way. Swimming's good. Just getting out, walking, and just trying to be moving all the time, right? More steps, the better. The flip side of that, aerobic exercise is anaerobic. And anaerobic means in the absence of oxygen, right? So this is where your body is drawing more from its internal sources for energy than it is oxygen. And you know that because you do short, heavy bursts of exercises. That's where we start looking at weightlifting, right? Weightlifting, we don't go for 10 minutes of lifting weights straight. We do maybe a couple minutes, then we take a break, that kind of thing. So weightlifting, resistance bands, those are all good examples of anaerobic type exercises. Benefits you get from that, you're independent, you keep your balance, it helps you prevent falls, you get stability, and you develop more muscle with weight training. And that's critical because the more muscle you have, the faster your metabolism will be, and the more fat burning that will occur. So even if you didn't go out and do aerobic type exercises, if you did weight training alone and you built enough muscle and you kept your diet in check, then you're going to be burning fat. Then, of course, the last piece, which is probably one of my favorite pieces of this triad, is the spirit side. And again, when I talk about spirit, I'm not talking about a religion. I'm talking about what's inside of you, if you want to call it your soul, your spirituality, your essence, whatever that may be. One of my favorite authors, Wayne Dyer, has a great way of expressing it. I love this saying. Essentially, we are not human beings in search of a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings immersed in a human experience, which is something I believe wholeheartedly. For me, it's a connection, a relationship with God, though, again, it doesn't have to be a religion. It's really a connecting into that inner essence of who you are. You're being in tune with that. and you're able to draw from that and be in harmony with the other two components of exercise and nutrition, right? This all lends itself to promoting healing and giving you the strength and the energy and endurance you may need to push past limits that you think you have, but you really don't, right? So maybe on that last set, you're trying to get something up, or that last mile you're trying to get in, you can draw into that spirit side of you and say, I'm better than this and more than this, and then you're going to go and you're going to push forward. So some things that I try to do with trying to enhance the spirituality of my healthy living journey, I try to spend time in the Word of God. That's a big thing for me. I'll do meditation, though you can do yoga as well. Some other things that are great that I'm really starting to learn how to do now is get involved with the community. Being involved with the community helps promote happiness. You feel better about yourself as you give to that community. You interact with people. You give love. How can you not feel better about yourself and about your life if you're giving love? It's truly an amazing experience. And of course, good thoughts, right? Good thoughts are great. You are what you think about all the time. It's true. So I know I've gone a little long. I'm going to wrap this up right now. Just going to leave you with a few things that I believe, really. True health is achieved when all three of these are aligned. I think I've made that fairly clear throughout the presentation. It's not easy. It's not easy by any means, and you get what you give, right? I use my spirit as my guide, as my draw, my strength, really to get me through those times where I don't want to exercise, I don't want to eat right. I really tap into that side of it. You got to work diligently and consistently on it. It's an everyday thing. It's not just I'll do it here or there. You got to be really diligent and consistent, as I said. And as I've said already, you're more than your thoughts. When you combine these three things, really it becomes your identity. You get good health outcomes, and it's essentially who we are. So this draws to the end of my presentation. I appreciate you listening and going the extra distance with me on this. Hopefully I left you with some passion about this subject matter. Hopefully you saw that passion come out through this presentation. I will leave you with a wish for a healthy and happy life. Thank you very much.